thought that went pretty well with those people today.
Yeah, me too.
And I
Well,
got,
they get it. They're in the business. You know what I'm saying?
McCabe really
Gets it. Yeah. Well, he's been on our side plenty of times.
Right.
Didn't have time.
He's like the easiest one I've ever done. Because they, well,
Good evening. We're opening the continues the public hearing of Park Central. The first thing on the agenda that we want to take care of, so we don't forget it tonight, is the extension for it, which has to be done, the application here is by March 30th. You guys look at that and make a motion to approve it and get it so we can sign it. That's the final decision extension. All right, make a motion.
All right, I'll make a motion to extend, to continue the public hearing till March 30th,
No.
2000,
No, it's not to continue the public hearing.
to extend the public
Extend the
application.
application.
Make a,
and we, that form asks for both, to continue the public hearing from tonight to March 30th and to extend the deadline
We'll do the
to March
public
30th.
extension after.
Okay.
The continuance, we'll do it after the end of the meeting.
all right, so I'll make a motion to extend the public hearing until March 30th, 2016.
Okay, a second?
Is that the right way
Yeah.
to say that?
Yeah. That, for that one. we're gonna
Yep.
That
do.
one? Okay, well, I second that.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay, the other one would be the extension of the application. Angela, let's state that, right? Would be
They're both, we're requesting an
30th, right, but
extension,
it'd be extension of the application.
right, of the time within which the board has to make a decision.
So take and make a motion to extend that until March 30th, because the deadline on that is today.
All right, I'll make a motion to extend the application until March 30th, 2016.
Second.
Discussion, second? All in favor? Aye. Okay.
And can I get an email copy of that tomorrow? Great.
Okay, we're gonna start off with the traffic study, and our premier, Jason, is going to start. You can get the mic over there if you'd like. Or you can stand on that platform if you'd like over there, too.
So good evening, everybody. My name is Jason DeGray. I am a transportation engineer, project manager with Greenman Peterson. If some of you may have been in attendance a year ago, I did an initial peer review for the Park Central project then. I've then been asked to review the latest package in related to the project. We have done so, and I will take you through, I guess, the bigger elements of the project as we see them. GPI's understanding of the project now is that this is a traffic study to reflect the full potential build-out for the site, not necessarily what's being pursued as an immediate construction project. The 180-unit residential apartments is the project that we originally reviewed in a different form, but more or less the same. Since that time, the full build-out of the project has been revealed to include 140 residential condominium/townhouses, 150-bed assisted living facility, and 125-room hotel. From my perspective, the magnitude of the traffic that is generated by this project has notably increased as the building program has notably increased. That's not to say anything towards the conclusion, just that it's a larger scope project, and it's also something we commented on a year ago when we understood that this was a phase of a larger project. One thing I think the audience needs to be fully understanding is the size and scale of this project, regardless of how it's scoped and the phases that are getting built out. It triggers MEPA thresholds, and that's the State Environmental Review process. That's a process that's going to have to take place before this project gets built, and a lot of the oversight of the larger project and the appropriateness of mitigating action and the state's input on that is pending and supersedes the purview of the local boards. That also, I believe, extends to traffic as part of MIPRA's purview as well, given the size of the development. The project has changed notably in terms of access since we last reviewed it, so there are some differences to how traffic flows, but before I kind of get into the weeds a little bit, I would say, understanding that the primary concerns around the project revolve around the access to the project, particularly Flag Road and Deerford Road. GPI has reviewed it this time from a little bit of a different perspective as opposed to QAQ seeing the technical details of how traffic was projected onto the network. We took a worst-case scenario, and we understand that a significant amount of the comments that were generated revolve around the inappropriateness of the trip distribution and how traffic got assigned to Route 9 as opposed to coming the back way through the neighborhood to Route 30. GPI took a worst-case scenario and said any traffic that was originally estimated to use Route 9 eastbound now gets assigned to Deerford Road, and not as a representation of our recommendation, but to frame the conversation and to at least say, in the worst-case scenario, how bad is the traffic condition and what does that mitigate? And I will tell you that that still rises to a level that is clearly within the intended use of Deerford Road and Flag Road. That's not to say there aren't things that should be addressed on that road, but Deerford Road, Flag Road is a collector road by nature. It is intended to serve some level of regional mobility as well as local access, and by no means does the traffic generated by this site, even under a worst-case scenario, violate the intended use of that road. To give some numbers to substantiate that, traffic exiting Deerford Road at Route 30 during the morning peak hour totals today 147 vehicles. Under GPI's worst-case scenario, you'd have approximately 73 additional vehicles being added to the roadway, 50% increase in traffic. But that basically will take the road from carrying a car every from every 3.5 minutes to 2.5 minutes. This is not an increase in traffic that violates the substantial use of the road, and it's one that still remains within the character of the intended use. So calls for widening Flag Road, for systemic redo, for safety concerns, that is not a claim that's befitting of the impact of the project. Now, having said that, Flag Road, Deerford Road still warrants a plan of action, some level of improvement. There are trees that are pretty close to the road. There are other obstructions that limit sight distance. There's a case to be made that for some traffic calming elements to be introduced to Flag Road. That case exists today. I will say it's exacerbated to a certain degree by the project, but it's not being dictated by the project. And the best case scenario for Flag Road and Deerford Road is a targeted improvement plan that's befitting of the relative responsibility of all the stakeholders in the room. The culvert along Flag Road, to me, is something that should be addressed. The road itself is 22 feet wide at average. It ranges a decent amount, but there's a noticeable pinch point directly adjacent to the site where it gets narrower than 18 feet. With no other improvements along that corridor, that stands out to me as something that needs to be addressed, and that there'll be a significant amount of cross-flow traffic across that culvert now, which doesn't exist today. A traffic calming plan could potentially incorporate that narrow width, but I think it needs to be more systemic than just one particular spot narrow point. That would be an element that gets integrated into a broader set of recommendations. And the other things I feel warranted to address would be the access from Route 9 onto Flag Road, the idiosyncrasies of the geometry of that turn. It's a pretty tight turn. That's got to be, I think, properly vetted and designed out, but I believe MassDOT will make that a condition of their approval as they have authority on Route 9. And then the internal access from the new connector from Park Central into the new internal spine road. The relation of where the assisted living facility is actually presented on site and the hotel, that's not something that's been conveyed to us in at least plan work that we can see how that access works. But certainly the connection from Park Central to the new spine road opens up a connection that doesn't exist today. And I think that needs to be noted, as well as the nature of the flow in the internal intersection in that site. The intent, to my knowledge, is the connector from Park Central Drive to the internal roadway will be northbound only, one way. It'll intersect the Spine Road at a fairly skewed intersection. How that actually functions warrants a little bit more detail in terms of a signage plan, a detail. How do we ensure that vehicles won't errantly travel the wrong way down that connection? And honestly, the means by which that is controlled, I don't see anything that would necessitate controlling that access point to somewhat of an emergency access with a gate. The connection opens up the possibility of traffic from the future assisted living facility, the hotel, and the existing Red Roof Inn and Cumberland Farms to find a way to Flag Road via a backwards connection that is not represented in the proponent's traffic study that should be on the table to be discussed. With that, there's nothing from my perspective beyond those elements that rise to a level that needs to be really discussed in detail here tonight, but I'm certainly willing to address any questions from either the board or the public. And I guess having said that, GPI issued a peer review memorandum a couple weeks ago, back before the actually Christmas holiday. The proponent's traffic firm responded in writing to that yesterday. So there is a response to comments that's out there. I gave it a cursory review. I think there's not much there to really be debated, but, you know, reserving some right to get a little bit deeper into those responses before completely weighing in. That's where we stand. And, you know, a fundamental safety issue as a result of traffic impact does not exist here, in my professional opinion.
Before we go to the board, would you like to read into the letter that was done on the comments?
Would you like me to detail each individual comment or just the one?
I'm gonna go to the microphone.
Yeah,
I just want to know if you wanted me to detail each comment or just the ones he addressed up at that podium at the moment.
right. Just what is the new letter that was written?
From our response? Matt?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have that there.
And
All right.
It addresses 15 different points in Jason's December 23rd report.
Right. Do you want to read them in now, or?
I can, if that's possible. Or I'm just wondering if you want me just to address the 4 or 5 things that he had brought up, or I can go one by one through them.
Right,
I
whatever
think for
you'd
the
like to do.
education of the audience and the board, it's perhaps best if we go through it in, you know,
Sure.
a little bit detail.
Up there.
Yeah, you can go use the,
Okay, thanks.
I'll get to that. So my name is Samuel Gregorio. I'm a traffic engineer with TEC Engineering in Lawrence. I'm a registered professional engineer in Massachusetts.
excuse me, you cannot speak unless you use the microphone and you're entertained by the board. You've been here enough, you realize
I'm
that.
going to read them off. So the first comment was pertaining to the access scheme and the location of the assisted living facility and the hotel facility. Right now, and I left the aerial over there, but the assisted living facility and the hotel facility would be located on the western part of the site, closer towards Park Central, as opposed to up near where the housing development is on the northern part of the site. Thank you. For access, pertaining, the comment from GPI was to clarify what the exact access scheme for this particular development was, and that was for the residential uses themselves, which were towards the northern part of the site. Thank you. Access for the residential will permitted only from Flag Road, although they will be able to come in through Park Central. They will not be able to leave through Park Central, although it is assumed that most of the residential trips would be entering through the Flag Road entrance in order to avoid the Cumberland Farm traffic and the other such traffic that is on Park Central. Assisted living facility, exiting and entering traffic, both access from Park Central. Access will occur from Route 9 westbound to Park Central Drive, and the egress for that will occur directly from Park Central onto Route 9 westbound. So although there is that connection that goes from the connector road up into the new access road over to Flag, it's kind of hard to point from where I am, but although they will have the ability theoretically to use that little spine road to get up to the access road over to Flag, again, being an assisted living facility and a hotel, these aren't trips that would regularly go up into the neighborhood streets. They're more highway-related trips. Hotel people in the neighborhood aren't using this particular hotel. For the hotel access is similar to the assisted living access. The primary access egress point is along Park Central, in and out of Route 9, and only that small amount of the 1 or 2 trips who happen to want to use the spine road to get out to Flag will have the ability to. However, they will not be able to access from Flag Road, as that's a one-way connection, that spine road going up to the access road. GPI's second comment.
Sam, do you have a site plan?
I don't have a bigger version of the site plan myself. I'm wondering, do you happen to have a? Okay. GPI's second comment was to the need for that spine road connection and the ability for people to be able to use that to get up to Flag Road, and is that going to cause more people to actually use the access road connection? It is in our opinion that because the uses along the Park Central right now, which is the Cumberland Farms, the Red Roof Inn, a currently new hotel. These aren't trips that would regularly be going up towards use the neighborhood. And if it is the Cumberland Farm trips that happen to go back up into the neighborhood, it's generally going to be the people who actually already live in that neighborhood to go buy the gallon of milk, to go use the gas. There would be no real reason for the people, because a gas station, the generator of the gas station along that roadway is typically the Route 9 trips that are going by in and out of work on their way to work, using the Dunkin' Donuts to go in and out of work. The next comment was in general to the parking scheme of the project.
Sam,
Excuse me, you have to get a mic, you have to use the mic, or take his mic.
I think for the sake of the room, instead of listing these kind of point for point and not letting them sink in, I'll just, hearing Sam's response, I'll give you the peer reviewer's answer to that. I don't debate the use of the sites that exist along Route 9, the highway orientated, are they going to use Flag Road? I think the nature of the concern being the congestion, particularly in the morning, is basically what the most of the neighborhoods are indicating. I would simply say, I do not see the necessity of the connection from Park Central to that internal road in terms of the functionality of the site. Full access for the residential units are coming off of Flag Road. My understanding is the assisted living facility and the hotel will have access to Park Central. Maintaining that connection, at least in terms of unencumbered access, I just curious as to the justification for that.
This is being mandated by Mass Highway. They want as least amount of traffic exiting out onto Park Central as possible.
I understand that, but why now is there any connection at all from Park Central to the residential piece of the
Why
property?
is there any connection now?
Why are you showing a connection when full access is proposed off Flag Road?
Why are we proposing allowing?
Well, that's because we feel it was asked by some of the neighbors to try and keep the people coming into the project off Flag Road. It's an easier maneuver,
Yes.
coming up Flag Road and heading straight down the Spine Road than coming on the Flag, making a left and up that. So it
would
was to
certainly-
alleviate traffic off on Flag.
And I would certainly agree with that, and I don't have an issue with that. I would say by the nature of that connection being open, you do have the potential for additional traffic, whether it's Cumberland Farms or Red Roof traffic that wants to, for whatever reason, that connection point exists. It's an awkward configuration of narrowing it down to a short segment of a one-way only to a skewed intersection, and without any real detail of how that's controlled, what the striping and the pavement marking plans are. my own simple point is that warrants a little more scrutiny as the.
No, we're gonna do we talked about this earlier in the week, we're gonna do a plan showing how we're gonna keep the traffic one-way heading north on that Spartan Road and not allow it to come back down Park Central.
Right, and with that, I
So
think,
that's still an open subject as far as that actual, a detail goes.
sure.
Yep.
You go on to the next one?
The next comment was regarding the parking scheme, where the town zoning currently requires 360 parking spaces. Our site has shown, to get the exact number, 304 parking spaces to be provided. And right now, the proponent has discussed this parking supply with actually a bunch of different the residential developments and other such developments around the area. And this seems to be the parking supply that meets that demand for those particular other uses around the town. That being said, the proponent is also currently asking for a waiver for the parking supply as part of the 40B development project from the board.
I have no further comment on parking other than noting the town's zoning requirements.
The next comment was in subject to the date of the traffic counts. The Route 9 traffic counts in particular, which were conducted down back in 2011. At the moment, the Route 9 corridor has not seen any significant increase in traffic. It's been pretty stagnant. That being said, as we go through the MEPA process with Mass DOT, being their jurisdictional roadway, as they require us to do any new traffic counts along Route 9, that will be conducted as part of the MEPA process in order to fine-tune any of the dimensional and geometry parts of where Flag Road comes into Route 9, Park Central comes into Route 9, and other such things.
I have no comment. That's that.
The next comment was in relation to the safety aspects of Flag Road. GPI had requested that TEC obtain the crash records from the town of Southborough for the Flag Road and Deerfield connections up from Main Street down to Route 9. TEC did do that. We contacted the town of Southborough Police Department and obtained the crash records for the last 4 years. With that data, there was 11 total crashes along that stretch of roadway that were reported to the police department. Of those 11, and that's just doing quick math in my head, it's less than 3 per year on that full stretch of about 2 miles of roadway. And of those crashes, 3 OUIs, a person avoiding to hit a dog, 1 person hitting part of a wire that had come loose from one of the utility poles. There was no real crash trend that came from anything that pertaining to actually Flag Road itself and its geometry and other such items. With that, I don't know if there's any further.
No, I think there's one of the comments we've had twice now, and Sam just addressed, was the notion of a safety problem along Flag Road and Deerfield Road. And certainly understanding what the actual data says is important here. We haven't had a real chance to dive into those crashes. I'll trust Sam at his word. It does not appear as if an existing safety problem in terms of actual collisions causing property damage or injury exist out there, and just as a flat baseline condition.
And I was going to, obviously there's going to be a couple more questions about maybe the trees and that relation to safety, and that's going to be one of the next comments coming up, which is why I didn't really bring it up there. The next comment pertained to, that's
Should be
okay.
trip
The next
generation.
comment pertained to where the access road comes out onto Flag Road itself and the location currently of the proposed signage and the proposed stop line in its relation to how far back from Flag Road. The proponent is going to be revising the site plan in order to show that stop line a little closer. Although the location of the stop line doesn't necessarily mean that's where the sight line starts from where the vehicle actually the driver would be. The driver would be probably pull up to Flag Road past the stop line in that case. However, that being said, the stop line, we are looking to move closer to Flag Road. So in order to have that appearance of where the car would stop, that better sight line getting by, whether or not the tree gets removed or not, to have that better sight lines moving down Flag Road. I don't know if I should keep going back to
That's
each
just
time.
further design detail as you guys evolve your site plan.
The next comment was pertaining to the desirable site distance at Route 9 and Flag. The proponent will be working with Mass DOT during the MEPA process, the Mass DOT driveway access permit process, to trim whatever vegetation may be needed at that intersection of Flag Road at Route 9 to open up the sightline for people who may be exiting. For the trip generation portions of this, GPI has suggested a different way to analyze the trip generation for the project, which includes using different rates within the same manual and for the same land uses. So more occupied beds in the occupied rooms, correct me if I'm wrong.
So I would say, Sam, this component in the trip distribution is where GPI is making a worst-case scenario. I would put to you that the suggestion for the trip gen is the most conservative possible approach to how you could quantify this project. And the numbers I quoted earlier, and we could get back into, all represent both a more conservative trip generation rate and a worst-case scenario for trip distribution to frame the conversation as to what the worst-case possibility for this project is. And again, not necessarily an endorsement from GPI as to that being even appropriate at that point.
And just for a clarification for how we usually generate trip generation for a project, is industry standard is to use what's called the ITE trip generation manual, which defines dozens upon dozens of different land uses, and it takes traffic counts all over the country and each particular land use, and defines based on a square footage, a bed, amount of rooms, to actually define a number of trips per that particular use. And generally, there are the different ways you could possibly do it for each land use, create the more conservative value, the more liberal value, wherein typically we try to get that that most typical case scenario, which is how we defined ours. The amount of rooms in a hotel versus occupied rooms. Not every room is going to be occupied at all times. So whereas the full build out of every room being occupied is not typically the typical scenario at every hotel at all times. With that, the projections that GPI had, about 24 additional trips in the AM, 24 in the PM, 19 additional trips in the Saturday, and that's for both directions, both in and out together, equaling those amounts, is equivalent to about 2 or 3, one trip every 2 or 3 minutes, one additional trip added to the network every 2 or 3 minutes, which is not a substantial amount of traffic getting added to a particular roadway. Similar to the last one, where it relates to trip distribution, again, I'm sure he would say the same thing, the overly conservative worst-case scenario of the trip distribution. Our trip distribution was based off the fact that the location of the driveways are much, much closer to Route 9 than the rest of the neighborhood, and the access points along all the individual residential driveways, where Blackthorn does come out on the flag. We do anticipate more of the people in this particular development, especially for things like the hotel and assisted living, if they do happen to go up into that access road, although we do anticipate they'll use Park Central, to be going towards Route 9. That being said, we do understand that some people may go out towards Route 30. The worst case scenario, which GPI had addressed, the 73, 74 additional trips going up the main line on Flag Road towards Deerfield and then towards Maine, is once again about one additional trip at most per minute, or a little more than one trip per minute on average. And that being said, the roadway itself being a collector roadway, the roadway itself, having that low volume as it is now, there's going to be, I won't say a large amount of traffic, but there could still be a significant amount of traffic that could be out of that roadway without losing its function as that collector roadway.
So I want to add something here for the education of the public. There is industry standards on how we do traffic studies. And frankly, when it comes down to it, in terms of just saying what is appropriate and what is not, goes back to what is endorsed as the proper process for doing a traffic study, is endorsed by many, many, many engineers. And frankly, when it comes down to who states if something was done appropriately or not, it's going to rely heavily on, did it match industry standard? So whether you disagree or not, there are certain boundaries by which we have to operate. In terms of the trip distribution, we do this based on U.S. Census data, Journey to Work data. Every community has, percentages of traffic that originates within a certain census block and where it goes to. So we know in Southborough where the traffic goes to and from for work. You take those numbers and you put them into you look based on the roadway network, where those communities are and what's the most likely route, and you come up with the trip distribution. That's how TEC did theirs, and I think outside of the idiosyncrasy of what happens on Route 9, appropriately did so. Clearly, particularly in the eastbound direction, there's an issue here. The interchange is a major regional interchange. There's backups along Route 9. anybody coming down that wants to head eastbound, I will not debate the point, is looking to avoid that scenario. The percentage by which and the number of which is in debate. If you're heading to Boston and you want to head east, are you going to tolerate Route 9 as opposed to a local road? At some point, there's a line there. I'm not going to debate that line with you tonight because the approach we took is to say all of it. We said for the education of this room and for all of us, let's just assume every trip that heads east from this development uses Flag Road. That's how we're framing this conversation. The TEC study contemplated 27 vehicles along Flag Road during the peak hour. GPI is at 73. So we essentially tripled the amount of traffic that coming from this development. And even having said that, that is not a violation of the nature of the road. And that's just the plain truth of the matter. It is a collector road. It's intended for this use. It's analyzed, the level of service, the capacity, it's all there. The safety is a discussion point that I think warrants conversation and probably goes past this room. But that is not a conversation that only involves this developer. This is something that's been on the case for quite some time. The town has some mitigating responsibility here. But a plan is warranted for the future of Flag Road, and I would suggest that now is the time to do it.
The next comment was related to the culvert. And I believe, and I don't know if you had mentioned it earlier, but the proponent is prepared to replace the culvert at the board's direction, following their particular review of that particular item. As mentioned, we had mentioned this in, I believe, the planning board meeting, that widening the culvert, and similar to the trees as well, when you take down the trees on the side of the roadway, by creating that wider feel on the roadway, removing these things and widening the culvert, inherently will increase the speeds along the roadway, because there's less of that feel that you're clustered in, speeds do increase. And we just want to make sure that everybody's aware when that does happen at the culvert. Although the proponent is prepared to rebuild the culvert if necessary, just to know that the ramification of that is the speeds on the roadway will go up. Maybe not a large amount, but every little item that happens, the trees go down, the stone walls get pushed back, or anything, the speed will inherently start to go up each time as it feels more like you can speed on that roadway. I
think the rest of it, Sam, just relates back to the fact that it needs to be a plan in place for Flag Road and Deerford Road, and how that evolves and goes from here, I think is a conversation that we see advance. But again, that plan is not a systemic redesign of Flag Road and Deerford Road and widening and systemically taking down trees. It's a very targeted plan at very specific elements which should be addressed. And it's one that I think requires a lot of input from the neighbors and everyone else to make sure that it's appropriately balancing the need in the context of the neighborhood.
I want to correct one thing on this discussion we're going to get into, but people have to realize it, that the change on Flag Road or Deerfoot Road has to be done 100% by the Board of Selectmen. Tonight, and during this meeting, the board is going to agree on making a recommendation, I think, to the Board of Selectmen. We are scheduled for a meeting on February 2nd with the Board of Selectmen and make the presentation towards them on three major issues. One is the issue we asked by the neighbors as far as putting a sign up for no commercial parking on the road. The other one is a recommendation or consideration of removing some trees. And the other one is of the culvert. But that's our board does not have the authority to do that, nor does any other board. It has to be done by the Board of Selectmen. I've talked to the town administrator, and it's been agreed that they put us on the February 2nd meeting to present it to them, and that's gonna be their regulation to do of what they're gonna decide to do, and the neighbors should come to that meeting too also. And that's where this presentation will go. The only other question I would have, as far as that goes right now, is the fact that it would be proper that the developer would consider, or let us know if he would consider, mitigation money to do repair work on Flag Road.
Meaning like taking down trees?
Trees, the culvert, whatever it has to
Yep.
be.
I mean, I've agreed if the board and the selectmen want to widen the culvert, I have no problem doing the work. I'd rather do the work than give the money, so I make sure it gets done in a timely fashion. Not that the town wouldn't, but it would just a much longer process. And same with the trees. If they want trees taken down, I have no problem.
Okay, so that's be something that we're gonna discuss with the meeting after, but right now, just to comment on what Nelson said on that.
That takes the next comment off the board too, because that was gonna be about the trees, but, moving beyond that, GPI has suggested that looking at monitoring the Main Street at Deerfoot intersection up along Route 30. Typically, as part of the MEPA process, there is a monitoring program that is put in as you do any kind of MEPA review to the things you're gonna look at. And what that means is at full occupancy, for the next 5 years after full occupancy, you count the intersections again, and you make sure that you were correct. And if you weren't, you find a way to mitigate the additional impacts that you've had. As part of the MEPA first submittal that we had in the environmental notification, ENF, we had put down a monitoring program that included the intersections along Route 9, Park Central, Flag, and the access road. One of the things that the proponent has been agreeable to is to also add in the particular monitoring that would involve the traffic counts up at Deerfoot and Main Street as well, and also to be able to check that out. And the proponent also, again, this might be up for the Board of Selectmen, but the proponent has also looked into commission a separate design, whether it's commissioning a separate design or construction project by the town. The proponent is willing to contribute $10,000 to that particular planning and design study for that main at Deerfoot intersection. And I believe the next comment was GPI was also looking at the original plan to potentially do a always stop location at Blackthorn Flag, understanding that there are some discrepancies, whether it be with the safety aspects, the sightline aspect, and the traffic aspects. The opponent is willing to wait until full occupancy to look at this again, to look at the traffic volumes through the site, to look at the particular items that may have come down at that point, whether it be the trees, if that happens, and different aspects of the any kind of roadway project that might actually happen, to reassess a three-way stop at that time and whether it's warranted or not at that time. So for the time being, it would remain the same kind of access in and out of Blackthorn. And I believe the last comment was related to the channelized right turn on from Flag Road onto Route 9. And the proponent is looking, as part of the MEPA permitting process and the site plan, design of pavement marking and centerline stanchions, which will be reviewed by the Town Highway Department and Mass DOT during the final design for that channelized right turn onto Flag Road itself.
Yeah, now when I want to just add something for the record, it is Mass DOT's purview, and it's really their decision to be made. But the geometry of that channelized right turn, particularly into Flag Road, is pretty tight. You're coming up a hill, sight distances, not perfect. And with the Mass DOT change to actually have that acceleration lane head all the way to 495, it's that third lane, the right-hand lane, is now a high-speed lane. So you'll have traffic slowing down while people are accelerating to get to 495. I do think Mass DOT has a little bit of a burden to look at that a bit more, but that's not the town's purview.
And overall, the access scheme that we have on Route 9 is in accordance with what Mass DOT has asked us to do, and that will be refined with them as part of that Mass Highway Access Permit process, which they issue a permit for us to be able to do any kind of construction or work on their right-of-way, and it's up to them on how they actually want that access scheme to happen on their particular roadway. And that's the end of the comments that GPI had
Okay.
on the traffic.
Board members have any questions?
I just have a couple clarifications, just want to get a better understanding. So, I know it was touched upon about the parking situation with the 40B. I believe you stated that presently there wasn't enough parking, but they were going to go for a
No, so, under the current zoning bylaws, it calls for X amount of spaces per unit, which works out to be 360. So what we're proposing is 304, which we feel is adequate. We've done surveys with other apartment complexes. Mass Housing thinks we're high at 304. We want to leave it at 304. our point is, why build this parking? It's more impervious surface if it's not gonna be used and it's not needed. We wanna provide enough parking for the people living there, but why do, 60 more space if it's not really needed? We have guest parking there and everything else. We feel that we are covered.
Okay. All right. I'm sure that'll get addressed a little later. Did the traffic study take into account for, I know, I heard all your numbers. One of the things we don't really know yet is the children going to the schools from the 40B project, and potentially from other parts of that development, the townhouses. But on the 40B in particular, parents driving their kids to school in the morning, parents picking their kids up at school and taking them back up that access road. Are those numbers, those extra trips per day, does that account for potential children going there?
Well, typically, when you look at the industry standard, which is the IT trip generation manual, it accounts for a whole manner of different residential developments, ones that are close to school, ones that aren't. Some are close to supermarkets, some aren't. Some are close to gas stations, some aren't. It's the general average of everything combined and what a generally typical one would do. So I would say it does take into account that, yes, some traffic, the AM generation of a residential development has a lot of trips, and that's because people are leaving to go to work. People are leaving to drive their kids to school. People are leaving to drive to grab a cup of coffee. So inherently in those industry standard numbers, it has the built-in effect of the whole different things that could happen in the AM peak hour, or for that matter, the PM peak hour when people are coming home from work, people are coming back from their extracurricular activities at school and things like that.
We also have there's a legal issue here, and the developer will have to sit down with the school department and make a negotiation of the school buses to be able to go on the private property to pick up the kids. On Mr. Moss's property that we did, the same thing was done, and they were given permission, because where it's private property, there's a legal issue on an accident or something like that. So that's something that in the decision we will put that you'll have to do in the future to get it, so they can bring the school buses up onto the private property to do so.
No problem.
So the access road is, of course, a private road that's going to be maintained by the developer for eternity. I'm assuming that because of the grade, it's, with snow and stuff, we have to make sure that it's maintained in snow.
Plowing, and I'm assuming that's what you're getting at.
Obviously, we want to work with the town as far as plowing and stuff, and make sure that one's not getting done without the other getting done. So that's important.
Yep.
We don't want cars sliding down that access road onto Flag Road. All right, I don't have any other questions right now.
I guess one, clarification.
Sure.
So we're discussing a lot about a future hotel or assisted living there, which is not currently part of the plan. And the point of that is to, I guess, further demonstrate that the traffic impact from that, if and when it does happen, will not significantly have an adverse effect on this any further, or what's
There's been a year's time that's transpired since our original review. I made this comment from my perspective a year ago. There's a term in the, having been involved in permitting very large-scale development projects that go state review, they call it segmentation, where developers sometimes pull out a piece of their project that falls below those thresholds and skirts the state level review. It was clear here that there was some master planning that, was broader than what was originally before us a year ago. So the comment I made was, there's a MEPA process, they know it, they have to go through. Let's at least discuss what the full gamut of this development could be in the full range of time that is out there. It's informational. My understanding is it's still the 40B 180 units, which is not small, but it is a fraction of the traffic that we're talking about here today. And we could actually tell you what percentage of that, but it's probably around a third of the overall traffic is actually what's going to get built right now.
In the original decision that was done with the peer review the first time around, one of the issues they used was the discussion of 340B projects
right?
with a total of 584 units. And that was something that, what he said, he was talking about traffic issues, and this here is a third of that, even with the other
Right,
unit.
so the net
His-
result of the point is that even with this hotel and assisted living, that everything's still found to be acceptable.
Yes.
And then, I guess a question is, with some of the improvements to Flag Road, as far as culvert, trees, maybe even no stopping, that you feel that could cause an increase in speeds on the road, and
Well,
would that then have a reverse effect that make it, are you implying
Well,
that would
what
make it
I'm
unsafe?
what I was saying
Or is there
that-
a balancing act then to?
there is a balancing act, so when you widen any type of roadway, so it's the equivalent of, I'll use some extreme examples, but you get into an open 4-lane highway, the reason why typically people have the ability to drive fast, not just because of the highway, is because the pavement's wide open, the trees are far off the road, you have that perspective that I have the ability to go fast, and if something does happen, I still have that kind of ability to correct myself a little bit. As you start widening out a roadway, even if it's something as 22 feet, widening out just even a couple feet, that appearance that the trees aren't up against the roadway anymore, the appearance that I don't have to narrow myself down a little bit as I go through that culvert. It's the inherent ability of someone to say, I can go faster on this stretch without maybe actually hitting a new obstruction because I know the trees are gone. I know the culvert's wider. I know I could fit through another car if the culvert was at its full width.
So I want to add a little to this. Sam's point that if you widen the road, people are going to travel faster, I think is true. If we were to go through and widen that road from end to end and add a shoulder, that's very much true. That a walkable, pedestrian-friendly place is not one that has a 12-foot travel lane and a 4-foot shoulder, and that that's not what anybody, at least from my perspective, is going to advocate for. The notion that widening the culvert is somehow going to increase speed, I think, is a bit of an overstatement. Short of any other things happening on Flag Road, you have 1.67 miles of relatively 22 feet in width, and you have one point that narrows down to 18. That's not traffic calming to me. That's just a idiosyncrasy in the road that if you're driving along, you're not going to expect it. If there's a more systemic traffic calming plan for Flag Road, I could support the idea that a spot narrowing at the culvert is appropriate. But my recommendation, if you're going to do nothing else on Flag Road, widen the culvert to 22 feet. If there's going to be a bigger, broader plan, then I think everything kind of gets wrapped into that. But when I say a plan, I'm not talking about a detailed engineering plan. I'm talking about a traffic calming neighborhood improvement plan.
Thank you.
Excuse me, sir. Hold on. Do any of the town officials here like to make any comments presently? No? Okay. All right, the residents, sir, can you guys sit down over here?
Sure.
And leave one mic up there so that whoever gets up can get to the transfer stand and make your comment? Excuse me, sir, you have to get up, say who you are, what your address is, and you have to use the microphone.
Michael Kositsky, 40 Flag Road. Could you clarify on this map where the access road on Flag from the site on the Flag Road is planned to be?
It'll be right about where number 4 is, that's the access point where it hits Flag Road. So this represents the intersections that were part of the original traffic study, so 4 is where the access road is coming. So it's just, sorry. I'm sorry. Number 4 on the aerial represents the location of where the access road is to come into Flag Road. And if off the top of my head, the actual measurements, 350 or so feet from Route 9.
I don't remember the exact dimension.
It's something around 350 feet to the north where Route 9 and Flag Road meet. I'm just going to stay over here. So
All right,
come
yes,
up.
okay. Any other public comment?
I'm John Bottolini Jr. I own the house at 72 Flag Road. It's a duplex. And I also own the east side of Flag Road where the culvert and the widening of the road is going to take place. And I'd like to be involved with the town and the developer at that point. I do agree that it's very narrow of construction that would have to take place in order to widen the road there. And since my property abuts just about all of it, I would like to be involved with that so that,
You'll have to do that with the Board of Selectmen.
well,
They're gonna be responsible for, doing that work and stuff, so
right.
they'll be the one to make negotiations of you working together or whatever. We don't have the authority to do that.
Okay, so as of February 2nd, is that a meeting to present a plan, or is that
What's going to happen is on February 2nd, the zoning board is going to go to the Board of Selectmen and make a recommendation on these 3 or 4 different issues we've had and what else may come up by neighbors tonight. And then from there on, it's the Board of Selectmen take it over and will do whatever they can or whatever they think is right for the town.
All right. I'd also like to make a remark, too, that the drainage has been a concern of mine. I've talked with the developer, but now if the town's going to start rebuilding roads, they have drainage responsibilities, too. And, they need to be clarified, too, on what their drainage responsibilities are. I mean, it's not just, we're just going to make a road. I mean, you've built tons of roads.
No, I know that, but what the thing is that there's a certification of, they can't increase the drainage off of the site due to the fact they're making the culvert bigger.
And
It's the width, not the pipe size.
as long as the town knows they can't do the same thing, that's fine with me. I know the
Yes.
developer knows that already.
Right, and it'll, at the end of the project, it'll be taken, reviewed and everything, and
Yeah.
knowing that the way it was built was the right way.
That's fine.
Right, I mean, there already is a detention pond right by there that the developer's gonna put in. So, it's been engineered, I believe.
No, I understand that. It's just that this is the first I heard about the meeting with the selectmen and all that. I just want it on the record.
The other issue is with the retention pond that you brought up, Mr. Eagle, is the fact that, that final drawing is being done presently right now due to the fact of where they are with conservation, and then we'll have those plans shortly, that any corrections that may be made on that or whatever at that time, but right now, we don't know any of this information.
Yeah, we're still under design, and the final plans still have to go through Fuss and O'Neill for peer review.
Before we, Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Susan Beaumont, 49 Flag Road. Back to the traffic study, I have some questions with respect to the entrance and how the persons going on to the Park Central housing will be leaving from Route 9, going onto Flag Road, and then onto Park Central. It seems to me they need to take a left-hand turn.
I'm trying to think of which movement you're thinking. Can you repeat it one more time?
Okay, so you're going Route 9,
Okay.
and then you want to take a turn onto Flag Road, and you want to get into Park Central. So you would need to take a left, I'm assuming, is that correct?
If you were going to something on Park Central, like the Cumberland Farms or something?
The connector road.
Oh, the connector, I'm sorry,
road, I'm
okay.
sorry, the connector road onto the residential
Okay,
area. You would take a left.
yes.
What has the impact been explored of what would happen if you have a number of people going left during the high peak season, the high peak time of like between 5 and 6, and would that traffic back up because there might be traffic going out of Route 9?
Okay, I didn't know if you were finished, I'm sorry. So right now, the volumes along Flag Road, I believe, northbound and southbound, are between 60 and 70 per hour in each direction. It's averaging about 1.5, 2 cars per minute into that kind of stretch. Obviously, some minutes have more, some minutes have less. So it's, you go out there right now, you might see 4 cars backed up, but some minutes you'll see nobody. Inherently, there'll be general gaps in the traffic, and when you have a separation like that. And being at the current speed of the roadway at that particular point, because that's where we actually did our roadway tube counts, is about 35 to 38 miles an hour. Generally, all this, the volumes and everything like that, should be able to provide enough gaps for people to be able to turn in left. Obviously, when you get one or two backed up, that could exacerbate the problem. However, there's not a significant amount of traffic that would be entering this roadway per hour either. So the trip generation number, and I left my study over there, but I believe it's, even if we're talking something like a high number where it was 74 turning left, assuming that would be the same amount coming in, one car turning into the site every minute on average. Inherently, there would be considered to be gaps in the traffic where people should be able to get in because the traffic volume along Flag Road is just not actually that high.
Okay.
Excuse me, ma'am, I want to interrupt you for a minute. We did receive a letter that you sent, and I just want to put it in the public record that we received a letter. We've had quite a few of these letters, so we're not going to read them into the public record, but they are on public if somebody wants them. And when we transfer over to the Board of Selectmen, we will give them copies of all these letters. But I just want to make the statement that you did give us a public letter on some of these issues you're talking about.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I think Jason wanted to say something.
Just as your peer reviewer, if I'm understanding it correctly, you're talking about the left turn from Flag Road into the site. Your concern, if I'm hearing it correctly, our left turn is going to start backing up towards Route 9. I can tell you the volumes are far, far below where that's really even on the radar. There's 50 vehicles traveling southbound in the evening. When those vehicles will be returning, that's, far, far below anywhere where we start to think about a left turn lane or ability to peel those out.
Okay. And then with respect to, is there any plan of having any traffic signal there to turn left?
Along Route 9 you're talking about?
No, not along Route
Sorry, I'm
9,
sorry.
on Flag Road.
The volumes at that intersection would not warrant a traffic signal in any way. As traffic engineers, we have to follow a set of warrants set up by the manual uniform traffic control devices to make sure a signal only goes in where a signal is warranted. So residents anywhere don't necessarily just think that a signal is, oh, well, there's no traffic, I can just blow through this on a red light.
Mhm.
So we have to meet certain volume criteria when we do anything like that.
Okay.
And the volumes on this roadway and the access road connection would not come close to warranting a signal.
And I just wanted to clarify from what you said before, is that the plan is not to have any of the hotel or assisted living traffic going onto Flag Road, onto the connector road.
No.
Generally not, because a hotel, generally, someone who stays at a hotel is more of the regional aspect kind of person. He's gonna leave, he's staying there because he doesn't live around the area. He wouldn't even, not necessarily he might know the access road is there, but there's no reason for him to really go to Flag. Because of the spine road, the ability for someone to be able to do that could happen. That being said, generally for a hotel use, you're not looking at potentially a lot of people even considering that actually happening. A hotel trip most likely would be going to 495 to access something that's regional. Otherwise, he wouldn't be staying at the hotel.
Yeah. Again, as a resident, I see some use of it, not only by the guests, but perhaps by the employees of those facilities that would end up using that. So I would, one of my requests would be that the hotel and the assisted living would not have the ability to utilize any left onto Flag Road.
We're not willing to make that commitment.
Okay. The other thing I was wondering, and I'm rather new to the process, so I apologize, but what is the reasoning behind having the left-hand turn onto Flag Road?
Out of the connector road,
Yes.
so people can go where they need to go, downtown, pick up mail, go to the library, go to town hall, same thing you do. When you go out of your house, you take a left or right, or both.
Okay. But you're just talking about the
Well-
if it was just the residential, that's one thing, but now we're talking hotel, the entire development.
If you're staying at a hotel, more than likely you've come off Route 9 or 495. People aren't going to be coming from Southborough to go to a hotel on Route 9. That's just not feasible. Think about it.
Well, as I said, employees could also
Well, but still,
be
again, you heard from the traffic engineer and from the town's consultant, the road can more than handle additional traffic. And, how much traffic is coming from the assisted
How about commercial
living?
vehicles, too? Commercial vehicles for delivery to the hotels and to the assisted living, would those be able to utilize Flag Road without interference?
That is, excuse me, that is not a technical issue because commercial vehicles are allowed to do that in all the roads in the town of Southborough. Something we're just considering on this is to eliminate parking of a commercial vehicle on Flag Road. But on all the roads in town, a commercial vehicle are allowed to travel up and down those roads to go to different places. Most likely, I would think personally that where it's right on Route 9, it'd be a lot easier to get there from Route 9 than it would going through Deerfoot Road and Flag Road to stop at the project.
Again, I thank you for your consideration, but at the same time, as a resident of the community, I would ask that that you think about having that left onto Flag, particularly for the commercial, not having that for the commercial uses, and then think about it as well for the residential uses, and have them also, use Route 9 as well. But thank you.
Howard Rose, 2 Bantry.
Excuse me, Mr. Rose, you've also presented us with some letters,
I have.
okay? So just it's on file that we have done that, okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Gentlemen, the board, I could stand here and talk about all these numbers we've been throwing back and forth. I could sit here talking about census data from 2000 we're using. I don't want to talk about the numbers. We're beyond that. The numbers are what they are. We don't believe them. I think what we can all agree upon is there is a problem on Flag and Deerfoot. Can we all agree on that? It's in the report from our peer reviewer. There's a problem on Flag Road, whether it's about this project or not. There's a problem on Flag and Deerfoot. The developer actually put it in.
Wait a minute, I would like the peer review to clarify that, because what you're stating is wrong.
Excuse me, a challenge with
It's
Flag
wrong.
Road.
I'd like to,
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm not going to go so far as to say there's not a substantiated problem on Flag Road. I would say there are elements of Flag Road that could be addressed, but it's a balancing act between the value of a tree that's of 100 years old that's within 2 feet of the roadway compared to the danger. I think it's a very detailed look and an agreement upon what's the pros and cons of any specific action. As for existing problems on Flag Road, there's no hard data to suggest that there's a dramatic safety concern or that the road is somehow unable to meet its obligation as a collector road.
the
And-
issue
and
with
you-
this is the fact of going to the Board of Selectmen is that we only can make a recommendation because there is not a strong statement of that it has to be done. We had recommendation from peer review and from the, what do you call it, consultant, is that it would be recommended to do it, but it does not have to be done at all.
So I would come back to that with, there's comments in your report saying there are hazards that should be carefully studied. The developer put it into the agreement with the abutters and that they couldn't oppose Flag Road. During the planning board, he had 2 or 3 planning board people potentially asked to be removed because they were too close to the project on Deerfoot and had too much public knowledge to it. If you line it all up, your comments, even in your report, comment that there is a safety challenge potentially on these roads. My question to you, gentlemen, is why even risk it? The access, we can make this a left turn only, come only from 9 onto this road, not allow access to the rest of the road, and avoid all of this. There is no requirement for this project to come in the other direction. The developer would like it, and I understand why he wants it, but it is not a requirement. I would ask you guys, look around the room. It's obviously become a big enough issue. Look at the children in this room. Think of them as your
How would you
children.
suggest a school bus leaving the site to try to get over to Trotty or one of the, how would you suggest they do it?
They would go on Route 9 and flip around like everyone else. There's another project already going in on Route 9 up by the Honda dealership in Westboro that has the same one access on to and from Route 9. It is a feasible, viable way to do it. It is a safer way to do it. Why would you even risk all the things that are in every other report here? I'm asking you to use your common sense. Think about it as your family's living on that road, and every family, including the new ones living in town. The new people, not just our residents. I'm not saying don't build it. I'm not saying anything like that. I'm saying use the access smartly, what it was designed for. The original access for this entire site was Park Central onto Route 9. The state said, please bring it back X number of feet and put it there so we have a little more curving pattern. Keep that going and do not risk the rest of our town.
I think we rely on the peer review along with the engineer for the developer for input, along with common sense.
And I would ask you to use your
And-
common
and
sense.
I get it, but if you look around, this town is made up of a lot of rural roads. There's a lot of traffic on these roads that sometimes are during rush hours a little bit more than the normal period. But this road clearly hasn't had a significant high rate of accidents. The report already stated that. I think it is a connector road. I think it would cause a lot more hardship to safety, police, fire, to try to access that road if you can only go one direction. And I think that the small amount of traffic going towards Route 30 does not warrant forcing people onto Route 9.
Can I add
I
a couple comments here?
respectfully, adamantly disagree with your comments, and you should, it's your right to have that comment, but I think you guys there's enough people in this room here, and if you ask the rest of the town, the likelihood of doing changes to Flag Road, which will take a 2/3 vote at town meeting, is almost nil.
So there is far middle ground that needs to be discussed here. The steam has got to kind of come out of the room. Nobody is, at this point, the ZBA is making a motion, that is within their purview. The improvements are what's necessitated and whose agreement to do what. That's a conversation that's going to go beyond this room here tonight. I will tell you, and adamantly tell you, this project to be denied on a traffic safety concern, it's non-existent. And you're not going to tie a peer reviewer to that. And frankly, if this board was to deny this project based on a traffic safety, it smacks of inclusionary zoning and is going to get put back on the town almost immediately. So there's a reality here that I think everybody has to come to terms with. Improvements to Flag Road are warranted. Your concerns probably mostly deal with safety and the fact of speed and safety hazards. Slow the cars down on the road. There's plenty of low-cost, low-budget items that can do that. By all means, those should be part of the conversation, and it'll be the conversation going forward. But, the difference between widening Flag Road to add sidewalks on both sides and a 12-foot travel lane compared to what is actually necessitated here, there's a far, we got to bring those two sides together much closer to get to the actual solution that's going to be to everyone's satisfaction.
And what if you're wrong? Because you're looking at numbers here that you are done based on averages.
I've done traffic calming on rural roads throughout Metro West.
And what does that entail? What is a calming measure?
I mean, honestly, I would
Is it
put
a
the
speed
first
bump?
thing I would do, I think speed humps are something that you could have the conversation about, but I'd even go one smaller than that. Stripe a center line down the center of that road. You drive down Flag Road, Deerfield Road today, you drive down the center of the road because there's nothing pushing you to the curb line. You want to slow traffic down? First thing you could do is add a single yellow center line down the full stretch, and I guarantee you'd see a different operating behavior. That's a choice for the town to make, and it's one that they could easily make going forward.
But
I
if they
think
don't
one
make
of the
it,
statements that you're making as far as eliminating the left-hand turn, then may be a consideration of the board that we take and make Flag Road a one-way road out to Route 9.
that might help.
All of Flag Road.
I understand. I would even argue close Flag Road if that's the case at that culvert, to give them just the thing. But that traps you in. I would make it a left-hand turn. I still ask what I asked her last time, is consider that left-hand turn that I heard wasn't perhaps warranted to make it safer coming off the road. That's arguable. But still, Why would you risk putting, I heard 73 cars. It's also unfathomable if there's 165 housing units on that side of town now, we're putting over 300, that you have less than 50% of the cars coming out of that unit. The numbers don't
You're
line
arguing
up.
against 30 years of study of similar land uses.
But it's outdated data. The 2000 census can't be accurate in 2050.
If you want to make that argument to the Mass Housing Court, I suggest that's
If
the
I
case.
could afford that, I probably would.
Well,
But
exactly.
that-
That's the
now-
reality.
but we're
That's
not
the
there
reality
yet.
that the board has got to decide. If you want to challenge this, you're going to challenge the conventional traffic engineering of 30 to 40 years. By all means.
Well, if Route 9 is any convention of that new lane they put in, then it should be challenged. That's horrible.
Then-
What I'm asking for is this board to use their common sense to think about the town that they are here to represent and think about what's going to be in that row and what if you're wrong. There is no requirement to give the other Flag and Deerfoot access to this neighborhood. Every other neighborhood that's being built, that new thing on Route 9 just has a single access. That is all that's required. Why risk it? Think about it, use your common sense. I appreciate it.
One of the issues which I've done personally is I've gone back at Madison Place and I've taken the numbers, which are somewhat a little bit less than these numbers, but if you sit down there in the morning between 6:30 and 8:30 in the morning, I've counted 9 cars stopped at that intersection coming out on that road, ever, the most I've ever seen. 1 or 2 cars here and there. So that the traffic studies that we've seen, and I also went up to Northborough Road on the other development that's up in there, which is basically on the same thing. But the traffic studies on that project on Madison Place is the fact that what they state happens technically really doesn't happen. And I don't, I mean, you look at these projects and what the numbers they're using are strong and very professional, but they're not something that's a definite guarantee that it works that way. It's normally less, and that's what, I've looked, and I'd like to hear your comment on that.
No, by all means, we have, honestly, if you want to get really grandiose, you could argue that the overbuilding roads is just promoting more vehicle travel and higher speeds and less of a walkable, neighborhood environment. But certainly when it comes to the trip generation of this project, it's been proven time and again that we are using very conservative numbers. And even using the most conservative numbers, there's not something here that violates the nature of the road. There's not a pre-existing safety problem that could be easily pointed to and say, look there's a problem that needs to be mitigated. It doesn't exist, and it's a fear of the unknown. And I could tell you, you're talking about taking Flag Road from 2.5 cars, a car every 2.5 minutes, a car from every 3.5 minutes to 2.5 minutes. I'm sorry, but that is not going to rise to anyone's level of a major mitigating concern.
Respectfully, there's still not enough data because there aren't enough 3-bedroom condo units out there in the world today. It's a new thing, and there's 80+ units in this. There's no data, so you don't know.
No,
It's
but
a
there's
study.
plenty of data that the state needs to put in 500 housing units by 2040, and the Mass Housing Court said back to the town of Southborough, this is a appropriate project. The purview of this development going in,
The 40B was an appropriate product. The other full price units weren't part of that study.
sure, but as
And
far
the
as I'm
NEPA
concerned,
study,
you're
if you-
talking about the 40B project right now that's before the board. The rest of this is just theoretical down the road. That's got to come back to its own process when that time comes.
But no, the way they're doing it now is one project being built in 4 years, and it's all being done now. It is not a futuristic thing. This 4 years is one project being decided now that all the traffic from this plus the building will be built in the next 4 years. There's no future. This is happening right now. And if you haven't studied it as the entire thing for real, then you need to go back and do that.
I've studied the entire thing for real. The hotel and the assisted living facility is completely
That's
theoretical.
fine. That's right on Route 9 where it belongs. I'm worried about the 138 units that haven't been studied with that. if
That
that's
is
the
already
case.
in the present study.
Okay.
It
Well,
has
you just
been.
said that was future build. That was it. I just
The
want to
entire
correct myself.
traffic study, the entire scope of this development has been quantified, analyzed, and your peer reviewer and anyone who's going to look at this is going to tell you, you do not have a reasonable case to deny this project based on traffic safety. That's the end of the discussion.
I hope you're right. Once again, I ask you to consider making it a left turn only and not putting all that traffic down Flag Road. Thank you.
Does she have another?
Hi, Wendy DeMichaelis, 15 Bantry Road. I just have a quick clarification question. Earlier, the MIPA filing was discussed that I believe it was just submitted this week. Does that just include the 18040B, or does it include both?
It's the entire project, the entire
Entire
build.
project, okay, but not the assisted living and the hotel?
Includes everything.
Oh, and that? Oh,
Everything's on
okay.
that, yep.
Okay. All right. Just a quick question for the peer reviewer. Going through the traffic study, I'm just curious what your definition, or what the definition is of a sensitive roadway. You called Flag Road a sensitive roadway.
Sure. So it's a roadway that has existed in a certain condition for many, many years, that is being challenged by increased growth in the area, and it's probably seeing more cut-through traffic than it's ever experienced before, and people are sensitive to the changing of the character of the road. And I am sensitive to that as well, and I'm suggesting that there is an appropriate means to mitigate those concerns. And I can certainly tell you what I think those are, but
No, you guys already went over
Right.
that. I was just curious. And my third kind of a question I wanted to ask you as the peer reviewer is, a couple of people have brought it up in our neighborhood that, I don't know if anybody's ever been using Google Maps or their navigation system, and they've been taken down the wrong road. And we just were thinking it'd be nice at the beginning of Blackthorn to have some sort of sign, like not a throughway or dead end or something, just so that like right away people were pulling up, say, oh, you know, I can't get there from here.
yeah, I honestly, there is a warrant for a plan for the corridor, and that's signage, pavement markings, maybe some spot improvements elsewhere. That's what I'm advocating for.
Okay, so including that sign, yes, okay.
No problem.
All right, thanks.
I'm Tom Gittens of 73 Flag Road. I just want to make sure I understand the scope of what we're doing here now.
Excuse me, Tom, I want to
Yes.
say that you sent us a letter. We have it on file, just so everybody knows.
Thank you so much, I appreciate that. And I want to thank the board for sitting on this and everybody else for participating and being so candid. Am I allowed to ask questions of the two traffic study people and then subsequent to that make a comment?
Yes.
Okay, very good. First, so my first question is, did I understand today that people from Cumberland Farms will be able to, whether that in fact is what's projected, go up through the development and come down to Flag Road? Is that correct?
That was one of the peer review comments, yes.
Correct.
Okay, so that's new. Second, does this traffic study, I assume though the traffic study included that volume?
The traffic study assumes that it'd be the nature of the roadway, that not a lot of people would actually be using that roadway, and the redistribution wasn't enough to warrant a particular count for how many people would actually be using that.
So to answer you differently, no traffic from those existing uses is being projected to go up Flag Road.
You're not projecting any of it would go back?
I'm not projecting anything, but none of what
Oh.
their projections do redistribute existing traffic towards Flag Road. And that was something we mentioned
Okay, thank you.
in the peer review.
The other question I had was, when you did the traffic studies and/or reviewed the traffic studies, does it take into account traffic that would go, kind of by definition, out Lover's Lane, and then also off Clifford Road to Parkerville Road, down to Route 9, up to Route 30?
The traffic study only looked at those intersections that were directly affected by the project, so that's the access road, Route 9 and Flag, Park Central at 9, Main Street up at Deerfoot. It didn't look at the individual side street roadways along Flag Road. No, it did not.
Okay, thank you very much. My next question is, in terms of the culvert and replacing the culvert and making it wider, someone had said to me that the ability, but the nature of, that the culvert today at its current width, at least this was my interpretation, limits the speed limit on Flag Road because the speed limit needs to tie to the narrowest point. That's what I walked away with. Is that,
No, that's not true.
that's not accurate?
That's not how they set speed limits in Massachusetts. I don't know if somebody put a speed limit sign up, not necessarily following the rules, but that would not be how they set the speed limit.
Okay, thank you very much, I appreciate that. And then I had been led to believe at one of these meetings earlier that the notion of reversing the current decision, as I took it, to take the left onto Flag Road, that wasn't possible anymore. That ship had sailed, and we were currently we didn't have that, that was not an option for discussion at all. Am I correct there?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. At this point, I'd like to just formally present a petition. It's the one that was included in the email that I sent to you.
Yes. The same one as we have, right?
It's the one you have, yeah.
Yes.
It's just the original.
That also will get submitted to the Board of Selectmen for you when
Thank you.
we set that meeting up.
I appreciate that, Leo. The petition I had signed on Sunday afternoon, and Jackie, I'm sorry, I didn't want to go knock on your renter's property, but I basically on Sunday at about 1:30 decided I was not for widening Flag Road, and that some of my neighbors probably felt the same way, so I just started going from my house at 73 north on Flag Road. I didn't even count how many names there are, but it's 20 or 30 anyway. And just the petition very simply says, we're opposed to widening Flag Road, and that's my perspective. Took me about an hour and a half to collect those. Every door that I knocked on where anybody answered, they signed the petition from my house at 73, which is right down here at the bottom, all the way to Lover's Lane. People after Lover's Lane, frankly, I had a couple of people sign, and I had a couple of people tell me that they were not interested in signing it. And I just respectfully said, thank you very much. I'm not for widening the road. Now, I'm speaking just for me. It's not my place to speak for other people who live on the road. But I'm not for widening the road because I believe, as you indicated and as you affirmed, that it'll make people go faster on the road. When I drove here tonight, I passed 3 people. I was going 25 or so, and they were going at least that fast or faster as they came by. We were both going, and we were able to go without any problem. I think that if you make the road any wider at all, take down a tree, you're gonna make the road more dangerous. Make the culvert wider, you're gonna make the road more dangerous, not less dangerous. I think it'll ruin the character of the neighborhood, and as a result of that, I request that you not do that. I believe that if the study, if we're going to look at doing, or if and when, because I believe we need to, we look at doing traffic mitigation, we need to include Lover's Lane, we need to include Clifford Road, we need to include Parkerville Road. Because when I go north, I go out of my house. If I don't get, most of the time I frankly go out on Route 9, and I don't have the problems that everybody else seems to talk about getting onto Route 9. But when I go north, I turn left out my door, and I go up to Lover's Lane, and I turn left on Lover's Lane, and I go over to Cimarrano Drive, and that's how I go. So I think that ultimately, if you don't take that into account, and Lover's Lane's a lot narrower than Flag or Deerfoot. If I ran into trouble getting onto Route 9, and I do from time to time, they closed it off while they were doing the paving, I would go up Flag Road, turn right onto Clifford Road, go down either Deerfoot or go down Parkerville, because there's a merge lane there that comes down to a traffic light that I can merge very easily. So if you haven't taken that into account in your traffic planning or our risk mitigation, then I would encourage this board and future boards to do just that. I frankly support a lot of risk mitigation. I think there's a lot of things that we can do to make it better, but I don't think that it's appropriate in this meeting to encumber this particular project. Not that I'm thrilled with your project, Bill, but it's better than a lot of other projects. I'm not sure how we got to 180 apartments instead of the condos that I saw in October, but be that as it may, it's not appropriate for this project to have the burden associated with it, and I don't think it's appropriate to try to make that kind of a decision in an hour tonight. Thank you very much.
Any further comments?
Michael Kosicki, 40 Flag Road. I wanted to second the 2 people who spoke before me, right before me, and Howard here. I, speaking out of my personal experience, I think Flag Road has too much traffic even as of today. It's a park-style neighborhood, and I assume most of the residents here are family people who use this for as a Flag Road and surrounding streets as the walking area. And there are many dog walkers, and there are middle school children walking from the school on Flag Road and surrounding streets every day during summer. So I think even right now there's too much traffic, and lots of traffic are trucks during weekdays. There's truck traffic which are not local traffic, and there's lots of speeding cars, and I never saw a single patrol car enforcing speeding on Flag Road in the last 2 years. I think somebody mentioned here one-way southbound Flag Road. I think it's a good idea, and I think it asks for speed bumps and not widening it. So also I wanted to put this formal individual petition from myself and my spouse with the board.
Any further comments?
Hi, my name's Kevin Farrington, 58 Flag Road. Just a quick question about, there's been alluded to the fact that we need to come up with the traffic calming study, but then I've heard we're going to make 3 recommendations to the Board of Selectmen. How do we ensure that those 3 things are not going to make the problem worse if we haven't done the plan?
Say that again, please.
So we have a traffic calming plan that's been referred to but hasn't been done, right? And that's not the developer's responsibility, but that's a recommendation that the town undertake that to ease traffic issues on Flag Road.
I'm not understanding what you're saying.
So traffic calming measures, you refer to an overall plan?
It's the peer reviewer's suggestion to the town that a traffic calming approach may be appropriate here.
As this meeting goes on, we're going to make that recommendation, and it's going to be stated in the recommendation that the peer review and the original consultant did agree that it was nothing that was mandatory that had to be done, but they're suggesting it would be the right thing to do.
I understand, but I also understand that there were 3 specific items: widening the culvert, removing some trees, and I don't even remember what the third one was, but how are we certain those 3 recommendations are actually calming traffic and not making it worse?
The reason that the issues came up, one, the trees were mentioned by abutters on the other end of the project. The signs were also mentioned by the abutters, and the culvert was also mentioned, so that's what brought it up. And what we're doing is we're supporting the people that brought it up. I think we are. We haven't voted yet, but I presume the board's gonna be in favor of that?
Of course.
Okay, so, and make the recommendation to the Board of Selectmen to see, if they would go forward and do some of this.
Okay.
It
so-
would be their call, not ours. But we want to support the people that have come here and asked us to bring it to the Board of Selectmen to help them do that,
Okay, thank you.
okay? Anyone else?
John Green, 10 Tower Road.
Excuse me, John, do you have a new letter also you sent us?
Yes, I did,
Okay, it's
absolutely.
on file.
I first want to say I appreciate you addressing those 3 items. Unlike maybe some of the people that spoke earlier, I think that from a risk mitigation standpoint, that culvert and that one area that are probably about 17 feet in width are extremely dangerous. Any which way you see it, folks are already going 37 miles an hour on the road. They can't go much faster than that, with the turns, the bends, everything else that's going on. But we can mitigate where the road is most narrow. There's one point where there's 2 large trees that are hanging over. It's probably somewhere right after Red Gate. It's probably about 15, 20 feet after Red Gate heading north. So I think that and the culvert are probably some of the biggest points. And I don't think it's gonna change the look of the entire road, right? It's not gonna make people go faster. I think if you did widen it at all points to 26 feet, yes, that probably would do it, right? But taking those 2 points that are extremely dangerous are something that we absolutely should address as part of this project. Lastly, with making Flag Road a one-way street going southbound, I think that's a terrible idea. I don't think it's fair to anybody that lives in the area. My wife actually just got rear-ended going there, thanks to the new 3rd lane. It's beautiful, it's great. So, I would prefer if you don't force me into that death trap with my children every single day, so that's my opinion. Thank you.
Any further comments as far as that part goes presently? Yes, sir.
Am I allowed to speak again? I would just like to say that, with all due respect to my friends in Terra Road and Bantry and Blackthorn, the traffic has been pushed into our neighborhood from yours, and you've been protected. So I stand by my belief that at this point, taking down trees is not a good thing. Making the culvert wider, I'll leave to the experts in terms of whether in fact that's the right thing to do or not. But I would like to see that the character of the neighborhood remain as it is. I would hope that as you consider your mitigating circumstances, that you do look at the number of people who signed the petitions as I don't know if it's equivalent. I don't know how many people up there actually hired the lawyer and made that work, but I got a lot of people who agree with not widening the road at this point in time. And then I would also say, if we're throwing anything out there for making changes as part of the recommendations, I'd recommend a stop sign not at Blackthorn, but at Lover's Lane, where the really dangerous corner is and the sight lines are. I would also recommend, as someone suggested, I think our council, or our traffic study guy, putting in some speed bumps. I think that it would make a huge difference. Again, as someone suggested, slowing the traffic down is really the key. I remember watching a mayor of Worcester talk about, as a neighborhood, you got to take back your streets, and if that means you roll balls out in front of cars that are going, that's what you got to do, because otherwise cars just go faster and faster. So I thank you again for your consideration, and look forward to working with all of our neighbors to slow the traffic down and make it a little bit safer, because I think ultimately we all agree that that's important, whether we do, depending upon what you do. So thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I was wondering if the peer review consultant is going to be attending that February 2nd meeting.
Excuse me. Presently, I don't think they have to. I don't think there'd be any reason. I can talk to the town administrator, but there is an issue, right? I mean, how would we?
I mean, I think that dialogue could happen offline.
Okay.
My actual tenure with GPI ends on Friday, so, I'm not
so
going to be around
a
this
different
company.
position.
So, new company?
I'm going to a new company, yes.
Now, I don't really see a major issue with it. We're fortunate we have one of our selectmen with us tonight, so he's been here and he's gone through the process with us, and I think a few of the other ones are watching the video tonight, so they'll pretty well know. I will talk to the town administrator and ask Mark if he would think that we should do that, or talk to Mr. Rooney and ask him, and then we'll,
Yeah, I mean,
we'll
if
take
need be,
care
I'm
of it.
willing to foot the bill. I think he's helpful in explaining and talking to people who haven't been here tonight.
Okay, so I'll get that done
Even
immediately.
if we had to enter into a new contract with this new company.
Okay, so that'd be, all right, so I will ask and see if that's what they would like to do.
Okay.
The other thing is, I've met with Mr. Purple and Ms. Gallagher, Town Highway Superintendent, and I have asked her to review the road and look at trees and different things of removal or whatever. And when we go to the selectmen's meeting, she'll be asked to come to that meeting at the same time to make recommendations on some trees. There, walking the road, there are some trees that are across from each other, and they're down to 16 feet wide, and the hot top is growing up the sides of the trees. They've got so big in diameter, they've been there for 100 years, and they've grown in, and there's a few of those. There's a few other trees there. One is next to your house, sir, that is rotted on the back side of it very badly, and it looks like the weather gets bad, it's gonna fall down. And there's a few of those on the road in different places. But those are things that will be discussed with the Board of Selectmen on and what they think. Any other issues, like you brought up on the signage and I would make a recommendation that you take and get a letter to the Board of Selectmen, through Mr. Purple and the Board of Selectmen, very shortly, so they can review this, so something that will be discussed, because those are issues they have to handle, not us. So I would recommend that you do that and get it to them, so they have everything that they know that will come up on a discussion on that. Okay? The other thing is then with the board, that we make a recommendation to send it to the Board of Selectmen and request a discussion on, oh, one more thing first. We have two letters, one from the police and fire, which we had requested, and they've need some time in doing some reviews. So I would like to send them another letter telling them that we're going to the Board of Selectmen and let them go to the Board of Selectmen and do their requests through them that we asked them to do.
On the second?
Yeah, on the, you know, so they can work with the Board of Selectmen also on that. And the other thing is that we need to do is that we make, the board agrees to make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen on the three major issues that were stated. And the same thing in the letter is we make a motion of some sort to represent some of the issues that have been brought up by the neighbors, because of some of that have been said tonight, I see should be something that should be taken care of also.
Yeah, there's a couple of good, I think, points that were made tonight.
We
that I
have
haven't
been
heard.
asked to go to the selectmen's meeting. So that night, we'll have a meeting posted as the zoning board of appeals at the selectmen's meeting. And we can take, and the discussion comes up from the neighbors, and I most likely presume that we'll be asked by the selectmen what our opinion is on it. But most of the opinions on that will be, I would think, Karen Gallagher's on the road descriptions and stuff like that, mostly anyways. So I'd like to get a motion that I would like to write the letter to the Board of Selectmen to go forward with this process as far as that goes.
What's, I didn't follow your motion.
Just
idea.
that we make a motion that I write a letter to the Board of Selectmen requesting the consideration of the Flag Road renovation, and also state that Mr. DePietri has agreed to do the mitigation money to support it. The three major issues will be trees, the culvert, and the signage. And whatever else comes up would be their recommendation.
Okay,
So I just need a motion to do that, and so we can write the letter. I can write the
so
letter.
I'll make a motion to write a letter to the Board of Selectmen.
Okay. Have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, thank you.
We're all in favor.
All in favor? Aye, okay, thank you. Any other discussion on this traffic issue? Yes, sir.
Howard Rose, 2 Bantry. Just one question. As part of the peer review, there was the suggestion that the data, the counting data is 4 years old and should be checked for its rebaseline. Is that going to be done?
Say that again?
According to the peer reviewer's comment, traffic counts, the underlying traffic counts for this project were collected in September of 2011 and February and May of 2013. The September 2011 counts are now over 4 years old, and consideration should be given to updating the base conditions. We should be doing that.
Well, I was told.
Well, I believe Sam addressed that in his response.
Yes, the 2011 counts are along Route 9 itself, and those will be reconducted at the discretion of Mass DOT. It's their roadway, and they will tell us as part of the access permit process whether or not to do that again.
What about the 2013, which are 2 years old? Should we not put down a baseline point? I'm not
4
talking
year-
about do it all one counter and get a baseline.
I'm sure you're not going to want to hear it, but industry standard says 4 years is the window traffic counts are considered valid for.
And we grew those traffic counts out for the year that they were grown, so we had a 1% growth rate per year, and the counts were
If I
done in
remember in
2013.
your original report, you questioned.
Well, traffic has been flat or declining in the state for the last 10 years, so any growth is, in its fact, again, another conservative assumption from my opinion. I would not be shocked to find 2011 data more or less flat with what you count now. That's what the trends seem to be indicating. Point being, though, 4 years old, yeah, I would not stand behind saying they can't be redone.
And we artificially would have grown those out for the 2 or 3 years, depending on how
I
far
just
the
think we
base
have
year
a
was
very
from
unique opportunity having that window when this project started to see if the numbers were real. Again, all the numbers we're doing, I know they're on standards, but they are an average and a guess. The average is great when you're in the bottom or the middle. If you're on the top, the average no longer works. We had this unique opportunity. I'm not saying everywhere. Don't redo the whole count. Put down one strip in a decision that would make sense and use that as a baseline to adjust the numbers. It shouldn't take any more time that's really going on now, and it would just either confirm your numbers and I'll walk away, or we have something to talk about. It's really not a big thing to do.
I would say that the volumes speak for themselves. It's pretty clear the Flag Road issue is where it lies. The traffic counts we're talking about are Route 9 that are 4 years old or older than 4 years, and Mass DOT, it's their road. They'll tell them what they want them to do.
Again, I can ask, it's up to you to decide if that's warranting of being done. Thank you.
I mean, the board have consideration on what he's stating. I don't think that it's something that, in talking to peer review, that, you know, the aspects of the downfall of traffic versus it going up has been a major change and stuff. So I don't think there's a reason to do another study, which Mass Highway, when they go to do the thing with them, will do a thing on Route 9, right?
They may or may not allow, they may or not force us to do it, but
Right.
they
If
very well could. And
it
if they
was
tell us to, we will.
necessary, they would force you to do it.
Yeah.
So that would be something that would come back in front of, you know, if they thought it was necessary. So I think it's something just like go forward as it is.
I'm comfortable with the, you know, the opinion of the peer review.
Yeah, I am too.
Yes, sir.
Hi, sorry. Majid Yazdani, 16A Bantry Road. I apologize for getting here late. I was not able to make it at 6 o'clock. I was wondering if there was any discussion or comment about the estimated traffic that they're expecting to go up Flag and onto Deerfoot towards Main Street and Route 30?
It was discussed, yes.
Okay. I
Okay.
apologize again for missing it. Would you be able to give me like
Sure.
an estimate of the number of the?
As part of the GPI peer review, GPI looked at the potential worst-case scenario
Yes.
of trips going up towards the Main Street intersections, which could potentially, at that worst case, be an additional 74, was the number right? 74 additional trips, and that's both directions. That's not necessarily 74 in each direction, but 74 split between the two directions. And that inherently would not cause a significant change in the characteristics of the roadway itself.
Okay, great. Excuse me. I would ask the board to consider a couple of things. One, I'm getting mixed messages here in the sense that we're talking about 70 or so car trips going back and forth on this road, being deemed not to be very significant or concerning. Yet a petition was made to have members of the planning board to recuse themselves from sitting on some of those hearings because they were going to be impacted by this traffic potentially. Also, the other thing that I would appreciate some input from you guys and maybe some feedback is back in March or April, there was a nice discussion about development of the Burnett House. And there was some concerns raised about the traffic and the parking that was going to be potentially brought by the antique shop that Mr. Priscoli was proposing. Yet Mr. Giblin raised a big concern that a parking of 5 to 7 cars or the traffic that a very small antique shop is going to be bringing to that area was not acceptable. And the board actually voted to deny the permit for the antique shop based on traffic and parking concerns. So again, I'm kind of getting some mixed messages here in regards to what level of traffic are we willing to be accepting of and what level of traffic we're not going to be accepting of. So I would appreciate if that could be kind of clarified.
One issue is that with the thing, we did not decline the store. We made it so it was to do with the residents, the people that are staying there in the bedroom station. That's what we did with it. We did not turn it
Well,
down completely.
then I apologize.
The issue is, we don't have the right to prevent residential developments of traffic in the town of Southborough at all. As long as it's within the safety regulations, which the consultants and Twittical have said, we cannot deny that.
Okay. So then basically, depending on what type of project, varying levels of impact on the neighborhood is acceptable or not acceptable.
No, keep in mind that the one you're referring to was was totally different than what we're dealing with tonight. That was a fellow that was trying to set up a retail operation in a
Yes.
residential zone. Do you understand the difference between what we're dealing with tonight and what he was
Yeah,
trying
but
to
the
do?
basis that was denied was due to
It
the
wasn't
potential.
denied, it
Okay,
was
let
just
me
we
re-
asked
then
them
may I
to
rephrase
move it.
myself? It was denied to be open for public sales. It was acceptable, I guess, for sales to the residents or to the guests who were staying at the house. But it was denied for public, being open to the public to
That's correct.
potential. Okay.
And it was denied due to the fact that it's a commercial business in a residential district, which creates spot zoning.
Right, which is not what he's trying to do.
A whole different issue.
Okay, well, I appreciate you clarifying that. I guess the final point that I have is, you know, and this is, I guess, directed towards Mr. DePietri, if interested in responding to this, I would appreciate it. At what point do we feel that the density or the number of units can be looked at again? I remember when this project started, we were talking about anywhere from 400 to 500 units. There was a lot of concern about economic feasibility, yet when issues came up and were addressed, the numbers came down. It seems like it was still economically feasible. Then now we have renegotiated, and it seems like the numbers have come down again. Initially not economically feasible, but now again it is. Is it feasible, or is it possible to look at some kind of a feasibility study to see what is the bare minimum, the absolute minimum that will support your project, and yet still reducing the potential traffic impact and the density in this project?
The board approved the use variance for 158 townhomes. We're down to 135 to 138. That's as low as we're going to go. We have a approval for mass housing for 180 apartments.
With all due respect, I feel like I'm stuck in a used car lot negotiating back and forth, and when another issue comes up, then, you know, we're looking again at, you know, is the 130-some units something that's feasible, or, you know, is it a year or two, if some other issue comes up, we're going to be looking at 120 units?
No, we're looking at 135 to 138 units and 180 apartments. You weren't here earlier for the town's consultant who gave a presentation on the level of service on Flag Road, what it is today and what it's going to be when this project is at full build. And he basically stated that the road can more than handle the additional traffic with no problems.
And the total traffic that was stated was on the original request was for 584 units.
Yes.
And that traffic can go on Flag Road and still does not cause a safety impact on the Flag Road,
Well,
which is a third of what's happening
Well,
now.
I think to kind of support what Mr. Rose said, I really hope that is the case. And we're not going to be back here dealing with media and the news when a child gets killed on that road based to some of the safety concerns. And I can tell you and I can assure you that my daughter will not be traveling on that road on her bike or walking to school, which is basically something she's been asking for the last few years. But that's not going to be the case anymore. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi. Wendy DeMichaelis, 15 Bantry Road. It doesn't have to do with traffic, and maybe I'm not supposed to say anything about it right now, but just trying to get a handle on the process and what the next steps will be. So now there's this February 2nd meeting with the Board of Selectmen, which I think is great, but I didn't know that that was going to be part of the process. So could you just, before the end of the meeting, just kind of, you know, review the meetings that are coming up in the process? Because I think we're also coming up on the deadline, right?
Right. Oh, the issue,
end of
well,
this month?
Okay, the thing is, the Board of Selectmen issue is just something we're doing to support you people as the
Oh.
neighbors. That's all that is.
Oh, that's not part of the official.
That's the only reason we're doing that.
Oh, okay.
Okay, which has nothing to do officially with us. It's just that some things that you've asked us to do, to support, which we can't personally do it. I met with the town administrator and talked to the selectmen, and we don't have the right to do it, which town council has told me that in the beginning. That
Okay.
we don't have the authority. It has to be done by the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, that's good. I understand.
That's why we're
That's
just doing
good.
that for the neighbors.
That's great. Thank you.
Presently, the traffic consultant information and stuff is, I think, is gonna be acceptable by the board, and we're done with it, and that issue is gone. The other issue that we have now is conservation, which is presently meeting in a week, I think.
We have a meeting this Thursday.
And then they'll get, if they get approval
Next
on-
Thursday, it's the 28th.
Sorry, next Thursday.
Right, they're gonna get an approval on that phase of it, then they'll do the final submittal to conservation, which then they will take and get that done, and then our next scheduled meeting presently is going to be on the 30th of March, which will be the beginning of the final approval, and most likely it'll close the thing, and then we'll work on the final decision.
Okay, so tonight you have to do another extension or something?
Say that again?
We already did.
Oh, you already did. I'm sorry. I wasn't able to get here for 6. Sorry. Okay, so one of the meetings that traffic took the place of was reviewing board comments from other boards in town. Is that
Yeah,
still on the schedule? Is that going to happen today?
Tonight, if we get through traffic.
get through traffic, otherwise I'm going to bring it up to the board presently, that we may continue it to the February 24th meeting. We only have one thing on that agenda that night, and I think maybe to go through that, that's probably what I'd like to see us do, is continue it to the February 24th meeting.
Okay,
And that'll go over that letter.
okay, all right. And then March 30th will
February
be,
24th. We
March
have
30th would be the
1 minute,
final.
Excuse me, just
Oh,
so
I'm
the
sorry.
board knows. We have a normal meeting on February 24th.
Normal
That-
meeting.
Yeah.
And we have one thing on the agenda right now?
Right now, we only have one on the agenda.
Okay.
So, just so you know.
Feb 24th.
Okay.
regular
Yes,
meeting.
ma'am.
so the meeting on the 24th, February 24th, probably.
Yeah.
And then the last meeting on the 30th for the overall approval is, okay, great,
March
thanks.
30th.
March
March
30th.
30th,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Okay. Mr. Morris?
Hi, Don Morris, Planning Board. Maybe we're going to get to this. The Planning Board submitted a letter with comments dated January 4th, and just wondering what, if you could tell the public what the status of that letter is. Some of the comments from the Planning Board involve traffic.
Right, well, we're going to discuss that on the 24th. The letter is in public record. If anybody wants it, they're entitled to get it and review it. The traffic issues on the letter technically aren't really no technical issues that we're going to be involved in, from what I've read. So
Right.
there's a couple of different comments, but that'll be discussed on the 24th. Yes, sir.
Chris Perkins, 1 Terra Road. I just have a quick question about, you had raised the issue of commercial parking on Flag Road, and you're
Yeah.
going to bring that up with the Board of Selectmen.
What was done was one of the abutters on Tower Road, I forget which one it was, brought it up to us. And they also brought it up at the planning board meeting also, I think, it was in the letter. And that there's people, which it happens all over town, that commercial vehicles, most likely they're the landscape people, they go cut lawns and stuff. They park their trucks and trailers on the side of the road, and where the roads are so narrow and everything, you can't pass them. So they've requested if we consider that. Since we did that, when it was done at the last meeting, I received dozens of phone calls from people that have asked me why I'm just doing it on Flag Road, and I'm not going to recommend it to do it on all the roads in the town of Southborough. So when it goes to the Board of Selectmen in the February 2nd, I think that'll be an issue that'll come up and be discussed, that might be something, because a lot of people complain that that's happening everywhere in town. And it's basically, commercial vehicles. Emergency vehicles would be allowed to park. Residents would be allowed to park on the street and everything, because we wouldn't want to eliminate that. But it would just be commercial vehicles. So it's something that, when it goes to the selectmen, it may go that route, it may not.
Yeah, I just wonder what people think of, does that include like UPS vehicles stopping?
What?
Like UPS vehicles stopping to make a delivery, is it?
That was a question that's come up, and that's something that I'm gonna have to, the selectmen resolve that issue on that, because it, the UPS and FedEx and stuff like that, most of them, they park on the street, they don't go into the driveways. So there's a lot of issues that I think on that is that the type of trucks they use really would have a hard time backing out of driveways. to do that, so that might be something that would be, but to leave a vehicle there for 2 hours or whatever, to do something like that would be a different issue. And I think that, I would hope that would be the way my personal issue would be the way the selectmen would entertain it, that that's what they would be looking at, and not, you know, emergency vehicles, power company vehicles, just, you know, business people that are working in a house to do different types of work should be mandated to have to park in the driveways and not on the streets. Is that something you'd be?
He has a letter.
Excuse me.
He has a letter.
Okay, hold on, where is it?
No, he submitted a letter.
Okay, you've already submitted your letter then, so that'll also go to the Board of Selectmen, okay? Thank you. Yes?
A question regarding the other letter I submitted, this is somewhat to do with traffic. It was about a feasibility study to see if our school system can handle the amount of kids coming into there. Will that be discussed at the 24th? And question for Mr. DePietri. I know it's late in the game, but perhaps you would consider making the for sale units over 55 units. That would alleviate the problem of the school system feasibility. It would also change the traffic study significantly and perhaps alleviate some of our problems.
The school issue is not an issue to do, not by us. There's nothing that has to be done on 340B projects I've done in the past. and
Well, that
one
was
of
part of
them-
the original study for the 40B for the state, was a feasibility study saying this town can absorb it, including the school system. One of the things that you're tasked with, if I'm not mistaken, is making sure it's economically feasible for the town, and the taxes that are taken from this project, that we don't lose money on it as well. If the taxes coming from this project go to force a new school system, and frankly, what makes our town what it is, I think it's something that should be addressed. It was addressed in the original 40B project. It should be addressed as this project as a whole.
Well, taxes are gonna go everywhere, as they do for residential people.
Correct, but if those taxes now have to afford a larger school or more teachers, now we're putting it into a school system, the town isn't getting the benefits they should have gotten from this. If it's an over 55 community, we no longer have the extra burden on our schools, therefore the taxes should go to the town where it should be for the municipalities and the things we really needed for water systems, et cetera.
And one of the major issues of this development, when we started, which I personally started, was to make it a rental development. Due to the fact that that would not affect the schools as much as a regular per se development would. Bob Moss's project in Southborough has one of the smallest number of children in it than any project in the Massachusetts presently. Right now, they have 14 kids that are
But
there.
when you
that
add
go
these
to
for
the school.
sales.
And what?
But when you add the for sale units with the 83 bedroom units, now you're inviting a huge amount of kids, and that's where
These-
it's gonna come in.
These are they're rental units.
No, they're for
The
sale
three-bedroom issue, we have no control over. It's done by Mass Housing, and it's not that many units total.
Respectfully, not the 40B, the 40A project has a huge amount of three-bedroom. When you couldn't get 158 units, we went to 134. A third of them became three-bedroom units. Three-bedroom units
That
is like
has
us.
no say by us or anything. It's no different than a developer in the town of Southborough building normal houses that have 4 to 5 bedrooms in them.
But except you've taken this project out of the planning board and made it under this 40A, 40B as one project. It is now under your jurisdiction to do that. That's where the feasibility study that happens for the 40B project should now happen at the 40A. This is where we're getting into that mess where we've taken two projects and put them together. We're not doing our homework and our due diligence to see if the town can afford it. What I fear is our taxes are not only going to go up, but we're not going to have the school system and everything that makes this town what it is because we're doing this project without doing our proper homework. So again, a 55 unit is appropriate to solve that problem. If not, I've asked for that feasibility study. I think the planning board's memo also asked for that feasibility study, because if this board is going to take over the role that the planning board did, that feasibility needs to be included just like it was in a 40.
What do you mean by 55 units?
55 and over unit,
Right.
put a
well,
restriction on it.
Presently, there are no 55 and over units available in the town of Southborough. There's already
And that
been-
was also identified by the town as one of the needs this town has. So by doing this, Mr. DePietri could solve one of the deficiencies the town has defined in their housing plan. He shouldn't lose any more money because the same units could be sold at the same cost, and it could not hurt our school system. So I ask, as a consideration.
Also in the town's housing plan is as short as the three-bedroom units. I'm addressing that with this project. Maybe the next project, I'll address the over 55 problem. But at this particular site, we're gonna do 180 rental apartments and between 135 and 140 for sale, 2 and 3-bedroom townhomes.
And then again, I think the town, it has to do their due diligence and say that the town can actually absorb that many units that quickly. In 4 years, we can take that many units and not destroy our infrastructure. It's in a letter. It's, again, I believe the planning board had the same comments. I think you would be doing this town a disservice if you didn't follow through with that.
Any other questions? Okay. We consider to make a motion to continue this public hearing until February 24th at, the first meeting is at 7:30, and I figured that'd be roughly 45 minutes to an hour. So I would say the second meeting, present, we would make it 8:30. Is that agreeable?
All right, that's fine. I'll
Or
make-
why don't we just make it easier, and we'll do it at 8:15, and if they have to wait, they have to wait.
So, the 24th, we're starting at 7:30?
Yes, that's
Right.
the first meeting.
But not with the park center.
Not
No,
with
no, but
Park
just
Central.
in general, that's when the
Right.
meeting is starting that evening?
Okay.
Okay.
So we have a motion to do that?
All right, I'll make a motion.
Excuse me first, Mr. Petrie, are you agreeable?
Yes, the 24th is fine with us.
Okay.
All right, so I'll make a motion to continue the public hearing until February 24th at 8:15.
8:15, discussion? Second?
I second that.
Any discussion?
No discussion.
All in favor? Aye, thank you. Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn, please? Oh, excuse me, no, we have some minutes we have to take care of ourselves, just for the zoning board.
Okay.
Okay, so we do those for Karen. Karen, you have,
And
Right
Mr.
here.
Chairman, just one point,
excuse me, yes, sir?
in the written extension that we filed earlier, it did suggest that the next meeting was going to be on the 30th, so
I just changed that to the
Okay.
24th.
Okay,
So when
good.
she emails it you tomorrow.
It'll say the
she'll-
24th.
Right, and we'll initial it and sign it properly, so there's no
I
questions
can do
about
that
it.
right now.
Yeah, why don't we just,
That's why I did that.
just to make sure, because then I don't want no
We're still in a meeting.
no issues down the road.
We haven't adjourned.
Excuse me, can we?
We haven't adjourned a meeting here.
You haven't, want to give a,
We have a 2-minute recess.
yeah, two-minute recess.
Fine.
We're gonna have a 2-minute recess.
Wife's yapping at me about her car. Do you need?
We're opening up our meeting again. We have minutes to approve. What do we got?
We got well, we'll start with the December 9th minutes.
Yeah.
Everyone read that?
Yes?
I had no problems. I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
Do I have a second?
I will second that.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, next set of minutes, please.
That would be the January 6th minutes, and that was a very quick meeting.
Yep.
And I'd like to vote to approve the minutes as written.
Second?
I will second that.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye. And that's it.
Is that it, Karen?
That's it.
Okay. The other thing, just so the board knows, because I did this prior to coming here, we have a presentation that's been made by Jack Bartolini Builders, for a 55 and over project on Packerville Road. And he's going to come in front of us on the 24th and make the presentation for the 55 and over project. There is 13 units available presently to be built, which is up to date now, which came from the town planner, and it also came from the assessor's office. They yearly, add up what was built and come up with the percentage numbers. So there's 13 units available, and I think he's going to build for 12, whatever.
Right, so
12.
he initially applied for 13 units.
And we had to reduce it to
and
12 because they were wrong.
No public hearing, nothing had been done. The application was submitted the end of December 28th, and he decided to change his plan. So this memo is asking for us to withdraw, and that he just recently reapplied for 12
Yeah,
units.
because we just had it withdrawn because we didn't file it anyways. So it's just done. So he's going to come in front of us on the 24th.
Is this the site that's at the end by
Yeah,
Southborough Road?
the one that he went and did a
He wanted the two-family?
little subdivision in. Now he's coming back with this.
Okay.
Okay,
For the
so he's
55
gonna
and
come
over.
see us on the 24th.
What?
The 24th, you're saying?
Yeah, at 7:30.
7:30, he's the first.
So that's the one thing on the docket you said
Right.
that was,
And there's the second one, that was the Park
Yeah, and
Central.
the second one will be
Okay.
Park Central.
okay.
Okay.
Okay, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Oh,
wait a minute,
yes. Oh,
excuse me.
gosh.
I have to make a request that we make a motion that we are going to have a meeting with the Board of Selectmen on January 2nd.
February 2nd.
Excuse me, February 2nd.
So
Thank you.
clarify that for me. So we as a board are gonna be at the,
You don't have to all come, but they would, I've been asked to come, and the
come.
board can come if you want. It's going to be on this discussion on the Flag Road
I would like to, I
traffic.
mean, I would
But
certainly,
you're more than welcome to come.
no, I'd certainly plan on it. I
February
just-
2nd.
Just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, and I don't know the time yet exactly, but they'll let us know what time we're on the agenda.
Okay, so February 2nd with the
Selectmen.
Board of Selectmen.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
Do we have a second?
Second what?
Motion to
Rep-
continue
To represent,
our next meeting to be with the Board of Selectmen on February 2nd to discuss the Flag Road
traffic issue.
traffic discussion. There is not an issue.
Our traffic recommendations or.
Yeah, traffic recommendation.
Okay.
So-
Second?
I'll second that, sure.
All in favor? Aye. So we have a motion to
Adjourn?
adjourn.
I would like to make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, second.
Second? All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. Good night, everyone.